Thank you, Mr President. I seek leave to move a motion to provide that the Defence Legislation Amendment Parliamentary Approval of Overseas Service Bill 2015 be called on immediately and have precedence over all government business until determined.
Is leave granted? Leave is not granted. Senator Di Natale.
President, pursuant to contingent notice, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent me moving a motion relating to the conduct of the business of the Senate, namely a motion to provide that the Defence Legislation Amendment Parliamentary Approval of Overseas Service Bill 2015 be called on immediately and have precedence over all government business until determined. Mr President, on Friday, the Prime Minister of this country backed in an unhinged, a dangerous, a paranoid President, Donald Trump, into a conflict that could potentially end life on earth as we know it. We learned earlier this year that during that infamous phone call that Mr Turnbull said to President Trump, "You can count me in, I'll be there again and again." Well, now we know what he meant. He meant blind support for even the most dangerous and foolhardy of ideas, a military solution to the problem of North Korea. He meant that he would back in a man who has in the last week said that North Korea would face fire and fury like the world has never seen, and that military solutions are now fully in place, locked and loaded. Where other sane, rational world leaders urge restraint and call for diplomatic solutions, our Prime Minister is offering uncritical support for Donald Trump's dangerous strategy. And in doing so, he's making us all less safe, putting a target on each Australian's back, increasing the possibility of the unpredictable Kim Jong-un targeting people right across the world, including Australians. Now, as we teeter on the precipice of what is potentially the first war started on Twitter, let us debate two things. Firstly, our involvement with the ANZUS Treaty, our relationship with the US. It is crystal clear now that Australia must rip up the ANZUS Treaty and renegotiate our relationship with the US. This is a relationship that is making us less safe, not more safe. It is a relationship that endangers, indeed, humanity on Earth. We need also to debate who should be empowered to send Australian men and women to war. We're one of the few remaining democracies now on Earth that can legally deploy defence forces, committing the lives of Australian men and women into conflict without any debate in this parliament. In Australia, we leave that decision to the executive alone, and we know desperate governments do desperate things. It is deeply worrying that the decision to commit Australia to war could be left to Malcolm Turnbull and his mates. I mean, Mr Turnbull, Prime Minister Turnbull, can't even stand up to the homophobic bullies in his own party, let alone to this dangerous strongman. How deeply ironic that we have a government refusing to legislate for marriage equality without resorting to a needless postal poll, yet it can decide to send men and women to war, to put their lives on the line without so much as even a parliamentary debate. The Defence Legislation Amendment Bill 2015 has spent decades languishing in plain sight, while Liberal and Labor Prime Ministers alike reserve this power to themselves. They've plunged Australia into a tragic series of overseas expeditionary wars that have nothing to do with the defence of Australia or indeed our collective security. And it's not often I agree with former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, but this morning he was spot on when he said that the last thing Australia should be doing is handing a blank cheque to the US with Donald Trump as their president. It's not just the Greens, of course, who are urging for this parliament to debate and enact this bill. We've had the Chief of the Army, Peter Lee, urging the Prime Minister to consult Parliament. We've had the former Secretary of the Department of Defence, Paul Barrett, who for years has been championing the call for war powers reform. There are many eminent Australians who back this. Perhaps deeply disturbing from the United States is the rhetoric that each morning as we sit there and listen to the views of this president, that what we now have an opportunity to do is to reconsider our views. I call on this chamber to set some time apart today to debate and pass this bill.
Your time has expired.